Hi, everybody. It's Michael Angelo Caruso. This is another Talk to Me podcast episode. Don't forget you can watch video versions of this on the YouTube channel, and you can listen, of course, on most platforms, including Podbean. My guest today is Jim Ellison, an old friend of mine from my long time of living in Royal Oak. How are you, Jim?
I am great, Michael. It's good to see you.
Jim was mayor of Royal Oak. If I remember right, you were undefeated in your bid for mayor each time you ran. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
How many times?
5 times from, let's see, 5 terms. I can't remember now. But yeah, I've never lost an election. Knock on wood. Even in my 3 races for the House, I haven't lost. But I had to be 7 times. I did 7 terms as mayor. So it's a it's a nice record to have. Of course, 4 of those years I was never even challenged. I was unopposed. So.
Well, I think that says something. I remember you being, and this is probably not accurate, but I remember you being an easy mayor, easy in that it never seemed like you were trying very hard, and maybe that's part of the game. I'm sure there were some scuffles behind the scenes, but you seem to run a tight ship. The council.
Well, yeah, I mean, you keep the drama behind the scenes, and there's always drama. And sometimes there's going to be drama at the table, and you can deal with it, as fanatical, or you can deal with it calmly. I always try to deal as much calmly as I could, try to deal with the issues as they come up. But that didn't always happen, and so we dealt with those. But I was a hometown boy. I knew this city, and I know this city like the back of my hand. And I was pretty sure I knew where I wanted to go, and I was resistant to anybody who tried to make it something it wasn't. Fortunately, we had a lot of good people in elected positions and appointed positions that shared the goal. And I'm very proud of where Royal Oak is right now.
Yeah, you should be.
Take a lot of credit for that. Yeah.
Great city. You used a term in a conversation we had a while back called the hard gavel. Do you remember using that with me? It was your way of explaining?
Yeah, and it's the gavel has got to be used properly. And there's occasionally a time where someone gets out of control, and you've got to control that meeting with that gavel. And the louder it goes, the more attention you get. But I didn't have to use it that often. But occasionally, I'd have to hammer down people if they were getting out of line. That's the only control you really have up there as a leader of a meeting. You got a little hammer.
Yeah, and I never heard those 2 words together before, hard and gavel. I just thought a gavel was a gavel. But you're right. If you hit it extra firm, and it's not just the contact of the wood on wood, it's the eyes, it's the tone.
And it's all of that, and it's all. How often do you use the gavel? I mean, if you've got someone like myself, that I didn't use the gavel that much, but when I did, it was a change in direction, and people knew something was happening. So, but the gavel's there for to start the meeting, and close the meeting, and control the meeting during the meeting. So.
And you said a big trigger for this, the gavel was repetition. If somebody had the floor and they started to repeat, you knew you weren't getting any new information. It was time to move on. And you were the traffic cop for that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. That's the rule of any leader of any meeting, is to be productive. And I always tried to give, my colleagues on the commission, anybody else speaking, the latitude to get their idea across. But I listened closely, and when I started hearing them saying the same thing over again, we're not getting any new information. It's time for someone else to talk. And yeah, I would gavel. I would say, you're repeating yourself. Let's wrap it up and let's move on. So
I need to carry a gavel with me every day just to keep people from repeating themselves.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, everybody likes to offer their input, but most people come in and they've got maybe 2 or 3 points of that they want to make, but 2 or 3 points doesn't last as long as they've got to speak. And we used to give people at the city commission 5 minutes to speak, and people felt they had to use up that whole 5 minutes, even when they only had 2 minutes worth of stuff to say. And so they would continue to drag on. And that's where it was to be the most problem, is when they were just felt like they were entitled to their 5 minutes, which they were, but don't waste our time by repeating something you've already said in the same talk. So
well, there's a couple of things going on here. One is, I don't know if it's selfishness so much as it is ownership. If you gave me 5 minutes, then I'm going to use all 5 minutes. There's a bit of that. I see it a lot in the speaking business. If people have time for a 20-minute presentation, damn, they're going to use all 20 minutes, whether they need it or not. It's so refreshing when people are succinct and end early, and you're like, what just happened? This guy
Yeah.
got it all done.
Yeah, that was always especially during public comment. It was always deeply appreciated by someone who came in. They had a point to make. They made their point, and they said, "I'm done. Thank you very much."
Yeah, lovely. You left the mayorship for higher office. Some would say you became a member of the House of Representatives, a congressman from the 26th district. You've mentioned that you ran 3 times now and successfully. One of 435 representatives. So
Oh
with
no! Now you're getting now you're putting me in Washington D.C. I'm not there.
oh, a
We're actually
state,
it's the
state rep.
Michigan it's the Michigan House of Representatives.
Thank you. Thank
There's
you.
110 of us, and each representative is the way the state is divided into districts is we all have somewhere between 80 and 95,000 constituents in our district. So, you know, in my case, my district is the cities of Royal Oak and Madison Heights, which the two combined population is about 83,000, something like that. But we've got districts up in the Upper Peninsula, for example, to achieve that 80 to 85,000, they've got to go 6 different counties, and you know, and they've got to be able to cover that whole district. It's a much tougher job doing that than it is. You know, I'm pretty lucky that my district is in my backyard, and it's very confined. But yeah, it's you go from a situation, I always call it, where I was, you know, and as mayor of Royal Oak, I was a big fish in a little pond.
Yeah. Let's come back to redistricting in a minute, because that's a hot button too for a lot.
Redistricting is to be very important here in the next couple
but
years.
First, my faux pas. I think a lot of people get confused. I know I still do about the difference between there are United States senators and state senators as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there are state senators. There's 38 state senators in the Michigan State Senate, and there's 2 United States senators in Congress. You know, the work done in Washington D.C. is Congress. The work done in Michigan is the legislature.
Okay.
And so we consider ourselves members of the legislature. Some of us are representatives in the House representatives, and the other are state senators.
So the burning question is it better to be in the state or in DC? You
know, it was funny. We were I wouldn't want to go work in DC. That's you know, I'm a homeboy. I you know, you talk about being a little fish in a big pond. I mean, you're a minnow and something like that, unless you've got power and influence and wealth, unfortunately, and the audience. You're just another, you know, you're another worker. You go to the morning, you punch your clock, you do your congressional work, and then you go home at night. But that's not something I've ever aspired to. I never really aspired to be in politics anyways, because my background is in construction. I spent 30 years in the construction industry. And I got involved in the city of Royal Oak because I was not happy with the leadership we had at the time. I felt I've been around the city long enough at that point, and I knew what I wanted, and I knew this direction I thought the city should go. So I'm going to go out there and offer my ideas and see if I can't lead a city to something that is not only more satisfying to me, but more satisfying to a lot of the people that I knew. And fortunately, I was right, and we had a good long run there. But you know, when you get into Congress, I mean, it is so overwrought with politics. I mean, we've even got politics at the state level. It's been a crummy week, and we as a tradition, since we're in lame duck, tradition is that the outgoing members give their farewell speeches, and so they all get 5 to 10 minutes to stand up and thank this person and that person and reminisce and tell jokes and stories. But some people unfortunately use it as a time to bash the opposition, and so we had a couple speeches yesterday that just save this for another conversation. Don't go public. Don't tell us how wrong we are on this and how wrong we are on that and how right they are. And it was an interesting one that really got me last night. The representative shall remain nameless, but it goes on and on and on about his anger with the governor for shutting down his church. Well, the governor didn't do that to begin with, but be that as it may, he ran with that. And then he proceeded to tell how important his religion and his church and everything was to him and his family, which I respect. I mean, it is. But then to start using it as a hammer about how the rest of us are like heathens because we subscribe to his philosophy of what his religion was. And I'm sitting in a room, on the Democratic side, we've got Jewish people, we've got Hindus, we've got Muslims, we've got it all over on our side, and they've got Christians over there. And it's just a total lack of respect for the audience you're talking to. And when they start using stuff like that as a political weapon, it's a disgrace not only to them, but also to their religion. Because there's, I talked to some of my colleagues who heard that same speech, and they were not comfortable with it.
Yeah, this fighting thing is becoming fighting with a capital F. I heard the previous lieutenant governor, I can't remember his full name, Brian maybe?
Brian Kelly, yeah.
Brian Kelly talked one time. In fact, it was a TED Talk here in Detroit. And he talked about that euphemism fighting that they say in politics all the time. I will fight for you. I will fight for you. I will win this fight. And Brian looked at the audience. He said, I don't want you to fight at all. I want you to get along with people. I want you to be civil. It got a big applause break from the audience.
Yeah, and that really was Brian's philosophy. Brian was never confrontational.
Yeah.
Actually, his wife, Julie, is a Republican representative. She sits a few seats away from me, and it's the same thing.
So what's feeding the fighting? Some would argue that the current administration, the Trump administration, has further seeded this kind of brusque, uncivil, exclamation mark, all caps, combative type of nature. But I don't know, maybe it's always been there and he's just calling attention to it.
A couple of years ago, I had this discussion with somebody about this and saying, well, Trump got so many votes and he, he showed that he's popular. I said, well, he got votes from people that really didn't vote before because those people never had anybody that spoke their language.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Trump delivered. He came in and said what these people wanted to say, and that was Trump's style, and that was his way. And so he continues to do that, even in the face of what's happened here, the election. But he has got some, and I'll go back to our state legislature, our House again, and it's really, and I don't even want to call them ultra conservative representatives. They're just right wingers. They're some of them are crazy right wingers. And they will defend what their interpretation of the Constitution is to the end of time, and that's admirable. But you don't have to be nasty about it. You don't have to imply that anybody who doesn't believe them is less of a person. So, and these are the type of people that come up on the House floor. We've been fighting this pandemic now since February, March, and these are the people that show up and they basically vote no on a lot of really common sense legislation. They won't wear their masks. They don't practice social distancing. And they're just very disrespectful to the people they work with. And the frustrating part from us is their leadership lets them get away with it. And, it's almost like there's a fear of pushing back against the power, which is those that have a tendency to be a little bit more right wing. And, I look at, I've got some very, very good Republican colleagues that don't like the fighting either. They, we try to get stuff done. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
But there is the loud faction that has to be combative against everything. And, they don't like the governor. So, last night they passed a resolution to take away power from the governor. In the middle of a pandemic, they want to reduce her emergency powers. And the really ironic part about that is they've offered nothing to replace it. They just take away her powers and they don't tell us what to do otherwise. The only actions they've really had is bills we've passed to extend what her emergency orders were to begin with. And so it's a political game. And we're in a situation right now in this state where you don't have the time for political games. Politics can be a fun game only if it's played politely and decently. It just turns downright nasty when you start getting into the finger pointing and it gets to the point that these people get riled up on the outside and they plot they're going to kidnap our governor and kill her, and they show up in our chambers with full battle regalia. They've got long rifles and they're standing in our we're trying to conduct business and we've got these guys with guns standing over us and they're entitled to be there because Michigan's an open carry state, and those that are in charge of enforcing, not bringing guns into the Capitol, don't want to change it. It's weird that we have a rule in the Capitol that you can't bring signs in. You can't bring picket sign into the Capitol.
Oh, you can't?
No, you can't, because they're afraid you're going to scratch the walls.
But you can bring a gun.
But you can bring a long rifle. You can bring, you can bring an AK-47 in and sit in the gallery, and they're not going to stop you. And that's intimidating to those of us on the Democratic side who have become the targets of a lot of this stuff.
So to be fair, I'm not going to suggest there are Democrats who out-Trump Trump, because I do think he's invented his own stripe for this thing.
Uh-huh.
But to be fair, isn't there a faction of the Democratic side that's also prone to violence, eager to take up arms, if not literally, then figuratively?
You're going to have that. Yeah, we've got some very far left people with far left radical ideas, and everything about the current government is bad, and they want this and they want that and they want to fight for it, and then just like the Republicans with the right wingers, we've got our left wingers, and we're not all happy with them. Yeah. And the vast majority of people are those of us, the more, and I hate putting titles, but we're the more moderate thinkers. I mean, we can go, I've certainly have my left leaning desires of things I want to do. I'm pro whatever us, but we and they have theirs, but we've got to be able to debate all those issues on a level that's going to get someplace. And we just scream at each other, and then we're not going to get anywhere.
I think the pandemic has provided a really interesting example of what happens when you get up every day looking for the fight and forget about things that may be more important than the actual fight. The pandemic is an equal opportunity offender. There's no politics in a virus. No, and yet it's become a political thing. Unfortunately, I've been telling people it's been so interesting to see what happens when public health policy bumps up against private health practice. Mm-hmm. That you don't have to listen to anybody if you don't want to. And by the way, in the absence of any policy, like a mask mandate, for example, then everybody is free to decide on their own. And what was really interesting about this was a lot of people chose to follow people who maybe didn't have any medical experience. They just happened to be in charge. And that became the official order of the day. Don't wear your mask. It's been fascinating to watch it play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we weren't very far into this pandemic back in February, March, where we lost one of our state representatives. Yeah. Representative Isaac Robinson developed COVID-19, and he passed away, and it just like suddenly. And we're dealing with the same thing right now with the passing of Sheriff Benny Napoleon, who was just a wonderful guy. I'm sure you probably ran across Benny sometime in your life, but he was just an amazing man, and he's gone. And we're losing these people right and left. I don't know if anybody who hasn't had a family member, me, knock on wood, I haven't anybody close, but I've had a lot of friends that have passed. But and still we get resistance back. There's some people on the other side of the aisle and outside the building that are more concerned about our constitutional rights, which I support absolutely. We do have constitutional rights, but where do your constitutional rights end and our rights to be healthy begin? And all we really ask people to do is to, wear a mask. It's simple. Wear a mask and stand 6 feet away. And if you can do that, if everybody had done that from the beginning, we'd be in far better shape than we are. But again, those people say, well, that's not true because you can't prove it. Well, we can't prove it because we didn't do it.
Well, and to be fair, there was some confusion at the beginning. There was some information out about whether or not masks were useful or helpful. There was 6 feet versus 10 feet. And there were just people waiting to catch you.
This was a pandemic that caught everybody off guard. I mean,
well, none of us have been through.
Governor Whitmer was not planning on a pandemic, and she got trial by fire, and she was the one sitting in the hot seat, and she's the one that was expected to make decisions. And in the early process of this, where not many people knew exactly what was going on, she brought in all the best help she could find, and even the professionals didn't have the answers. What does the mask do? Does the mask save you, the person wearing the mask, or does the mask save the person that's not you because you're not spreading disease? And the answer is both. really, but for a while it went that, you're wearing a mask, you're protecting the other person.
And there was a time when we thought much of the virus transmission was surface to surface.
Yeah, and now finally it comes out, it's airborne. The more you get into it, the more you investigate what's causing it. And now we have a vaccine, and wouldn't be surprised that somewhere, a few weeks, months down the line, we're going to find out there's a problem with the vaccine, and so we're going to start all over again. I hope not, but that's the stuff when you're dealing with an epidemic like this, where it's new, and you've got all the best scientists in the world studying it, and then you've got someone at the top of the ladder saying, no, these guys are all liars and it's fake. It's going to go away in 10 days and only one person's going to die. And those people that put their trust in that individual are going to believe them. And they're going to say that everybody else is lying for political reasons or whatever.
When I was in high school, I learned a term called centrism. It has many applications. There's geocentrism, where you live is the center of the universe. Ethnocentrism, your ethnicity is the center of everything. And egocentrism, in that case, I am the center of the universe. What happens when everybody decides that they're going to take charge of their own area? And in fact, that's what's kind of happened with the 50 states. Ohio isn't working with Michigan. I mean, maybe Governor Whitmer has some partners in the different states, but essentially the states, because they're sovereign, if I have this right, have been asked to figure this out by themselves or on their own. Is that what's happening? Because there is no national policy.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened. I don't think it should have happened. I think there should have been a national coordinated effort on all this, but the ball was punted, and so the states all have to pick up, and every state is different. So I mean, there's an advantage to creating your own guidelines to fit the needs of your particular state, but there's also an advantage to having some central coordinated effort, so that everybody is getting the same information at the same time and not having to reinvent the wheel every time they get something. So plus, again, in all fairness, this generation has never had to deal with this type of health crisis.
Yeah,
and it's embarrassing that the United States is one of the worst in the world. I mean, you look at Asian countries, Japan, and they were ready. They've been through this before. They understand it, and so the protocols were ready. And in our country, when all that was happening with the Ebola, I'm getting Obama and Obama confused. The Ebola breakout, where Obama had set up a task force to deal with pandemics like this, and Trump got into office and he dismantled it.
Yeah,
never needed. And so, would that have made any difference? It would have made some, but would have.
How much? The states were bidding against each other on PPE.
Oh, yeah.
Now we have to somehow share a certain inventory of vaccines.
The word comes out that the federal government had PPE supplies that they're holding, and states wanted them, and the answer from the White House was, "This is ours.
Right?
What are you protecting? You're protecting all of us, so yours is ours." But it's crazy things, and I think we can all look down as the year 2020 as the time when there was a lot of awakening going up and a lot of reinterpretation of what's happening in the world and what's important.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that as we come out of this, it's going to be a brave new world. Things are going to be different. It's going to be a new normal, and we've all got to learn how to live within a new normal. And I hope out of that philosophy that it's going to be, we get along better. We understand that we all have common goals.
Yeah.
How you achieve
good to focus on what we have in common instead of what our differences.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a good start.
Yeah, I mean, we as a political group can debate the value of guns and the Second Amendment and all that, and we do, but it's never gonna change. I mean, I'm a Democrat. I don't want to take anybody's guns away. I don't care what they say. You're entitled to your guns. Second Amendment says you can have guns, and I've got a lot of very well-behaved people that own guns, and I wouldn't take anything away. But it's that portion. It's the availability of some unstable person to get their hands on that weapon. That's what we need to get our heads around and our arms around. And how do we control that? I don't want to do it by taking your guns. What I want you to do is you, as a qualified gun owner, a smart gun owner, work with us and tell us what we can do to make it safer for all of us.
Yeah, I always thought gun control was a terrible name because if I don't happen to own a gun, but if I did, I wouldn't want anybody else controlling it.
No.
Should have started with some basic common denominator premise like
management.
We don't want our children getting shot up in their own school. Can we start with that premise?
Yeah, I didn't like using the word control either. I went management. Management is kind of a shared responsibility.
Jim, could you repeat what you just said?
Oh, management. It's called gun management. Yeah. Gun management, and we're all participants, and we can all manage our own guns. But you don't want to turn control of your guns over to someone else. Control has always been a bad word.
Right.
And it's kind of like that phrase popular now, defund the police, which has been
another terrible name.
Really misappropriated. But
yeah. Let's go back to ego for a second. Politicians that get into office, especially people that are running for the first time, make all kinds of promises. I don't know if it's ego or naivete, but even when people run for the president of the United States, when I get in there, I'm going to change this and I'm going to change this, but no one person has the ability to do that. That's just that's optics in the campaign just to curry favor with the voters, right?
Yeah, when I first started in politics and what are you going to promise us? I said, I'm going to promise you that I'm going to do the best I can for whatever the problem is. But and that's the only promise I can make because that's the only control I've got is over myself. In the end, I'll promise you that I'll work with you and tell you the truth. But I'm not going to promise that I'm going to lower your taxes or I'm not going to do this. Because you don't have singular power. You don't have that to do. You can't make those promises. But
why do we fall for that every damn time? Like, he's going to do this.
Because Michael, it works. People out there will listen to him. Well, he promised us health care and he promised us this. Yeah. He promised us a wall that the Mexicans were going to pay for. But, it's ridiculous, but it sounded good to those that thought that was an answer to their problems.
Yeah.
And now he is, obviously, Mexico didn't pay for the wall. They were never going to pay for the wall. The wall is partially completed, never going to be completed, and it's unnecessary anyways. But he was playing into what people wanted to hear. And from that perspective, he's a very, very smart politician. Because all it was getting the votes that you can get in and then do what you feel you want to do or need to do.
I thought the only thing more ridiculous than having Mexico pay for the border wall would have Canada pay for the Mexican wall.
Yeah.
Let's talk about special interests and special interest money and lobbyists. And a lot of people like to frame this as something that's totally unnecessary and it's evil and there's just nothing that good can come from it. I want to tell you something that I read recently and check it with you we can use that as kind of a springboard for conversation if it's okay with you. Here's how it was explained to me. That politicians like yourself that get into office come from, say, construction or some occupation that they had. And since they're responsible for reading and processing a lot of potential legislation, they can't possibly be an expert in all things. So they hire a team of staffers, often interns, other people on the team, to learn about the issues and then provide a digested version to the politician. Well, the only way that these staffers can learn about this is to have experts come in. Those experts are called lobbyists. Lobbyists, of course, have agendas. And then that information is eventually curried over to the politician who makes a vote based on whatever. But that's why we need lobbyists, because they are the only ones who actually know what's going on with these products and services and bills. Is that a basically?
You're absolutely right. And the age of term limits, it's more important than ever because that's where the institutional knowledge is. Because there's bills that we're always dealing with the same problems, with just unique ways of doing it. How many dollars in taxes are we going to pay, and what are we going to do about this and that? And it's the lobbyists that have the information. And lobbyists are so valuable to the process. And we go to them for advice. And they're not crooks. They're not buying us off. they're people trying to do a job. They're representing their clients, wherever their clients may be, and looking at the best interest. And there's usually lobbyists on both sides of an issue, so you'll hear from both of them. They're vital to the process. I mean, if you want to get rid of lobbyists, get rid of term limits, because that way you can get an elected representative that can be there long enough to learn how to do it. And you mentioned staff. I mean, it's very vital for me. When I went in, I wanted to keep the staffer in my office that had been working in for my predecessor, because he knew the district, he knew the problems in the district, and I was fortunately able to keep him, and brought on somebody he recommended to handle other aspects of it. And as we got through the first term, he moved on to another colleague of his, and I moved my staff up. But we're all learning. But the staff is very important, because they know the intricacies of how the process works within the process of the government, not necessarily issues, but how to get things done. And then, the elected official comes in, and 2 years getting to understand, first you got to find out where the coffee is and where the bathrooms are. And then the second 2 years is the knowledge you acquire the first 2 years, you start spreading it out so it makes sense. And by the time you hit your third term, you're rocking and rolling, and then you're done.
Yeah.
and you can't go back. And so we've got some very, very qualified legislators right now that are being forced out by term limits. And it's unfortunate.
So now that we understand how the information flows, let me ask a more direct question. Is special interest money a problem? I don't even know what I mean by the question, in politics.
Yes, I'm going to call it and say yes, it is a problem, because it's a problem because that special interest money will usually find its way to the politician that's going to answer to it. And if that politician has enough influence, then they're going to control the issue. I'm dealing with a personal situation, which is very upsetting to me. I sponsored a bill here beginning of my second term. It's a bill that would have banned it would ban breed-specific legislation. In other words, a community could not put a pit bull ban just based on the breed. And it's something we've been trying to do for years. It gets support. And so, I brought it up this year, and based on my experience with animals and my wife's position as the animal shelter manager. And I worked on this bill for 2 years, and I got it passed through the House with a large majority. And I got it put into the Senate, where it passed the Senate Local Government Committee unanimously. And then it got to the leader of the Senate, majority Senate leader. It's his decision of whether to put it up for a vote. He decided he didn't like it. So this one person, for whatever reason, personal, persuasion, money, I don't know, refused to put my bill on the floor. So it died. Assuming it died, they're still going on. I don't think today would have been the last day to vote, and I haven't heard anything. But we have a bunch of people spending a lot of time garnering up support for a bill that the vast majority of the public wants.
Well, you need to throw some special interest money at this guy.
That's something, yeah. It's hard to, there's any number of reasons, and we can make up all kinds of stories, all of it based on our assumptions of what happened. But he didn't like the bill. And so he wasn't going to put it on, in spite of the fact that I had a number of people over on the Republican side of the Senate that was working for me, not working for me, but working for the bill. And it still wasn't enough to persuade him to put up for a vote. So, because if it had been voted on, it would have passed.
Yeah.
And we would have been dealing with this new law that would have made a tremendous number of dog owners extremely happy. But because this one person, because of the position he's in, had the ability to kill it. And so here we are. So I go back next January, and I can start the process over again. Well,
I wish you luck.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that's kind of what happens. And we talked earlier about, where certain people get power that they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And it's just, you learn how to deal with it, and you learn what issues to push, what issues to not push. I mean, a lot of us will put bills out there just to bring attention to the bill. I've floated for the last 2 years a graduated income tax bill. We'll change how we do income tax in the state. It's not going to go anywhere because there's not enough support for it. But you put it out there.
Yeah.
because, you know, there may be someone that'll grab it and help us with it. And
Yeah.
then, you know, that's kind of what we do. But then we do get our bills that we're really adamant for. And then this anti-BSL bill was one that I fought. I worked closely with Ron Kagan at Detroit Zoo, and I've got a bill out there that would prohibit ownership of a non-human primate, and another bill out there about ownership of reptiles and stuff. So, you know, it comes from my desire to keep animals safe, keep communities safe.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's got to get support, got to get the votes to get them passed.
My new favorite word is intractable, seemingly unsolvable. Is the Democrat-Republican tussle unsolvable? Are we ever going to get to a place where we're not blaming the other guy and we have some common ground? And
it's tough. It depends on, you know, it depends on who we elect. I mean, if you continue electing people who are adamant that their way is the only way, then you're never going to solve it. And we've got those on both sides of the aisle. I mean, you get some pragmatic people that believe that their job is to make life better for the people that live in this country.
Yeah.
And they're going to learn that they have to cooperate with each other, because the positions of both the Democrats and the Republicans are valid positions. And when you've got the negativity out there, the pushback all the time, you're not going to listen to the other guy, because it's just fucking crap, you know. But if we've got you know, pragmatists that can go there and let's get some discussions done, and I've done that. I've got some colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle that we do have a good relationship, and you know, we do consider each other friends, and we can talk about issues that need to get done, and we can get some done.
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with how the two-party system got started. As we wrap up, the story I heard was that George Washington was dying. They couldn't save him. They had let his blood a couple times. That was their big thing back then. Let his blood.
Blood on it. Yeah.
And there are all the people are around him for his famous last words from the famous man, and he goes like this, you know. And somebody leans in, and he says, "Whatever you do," because he was the first president. He says, "Whatever you do, don't have a two-party system." And then before his body was cold, Adams and Jefferson were going at it, and it's been that way ever since.
Yep. And that's the way it probably will be. I mean, there's certainly validity in having two sides of an issue. The question is, there's validity in having three sides of an issue or four sides. And, you know, and we've got other parties out there, the minor parties we call them, but the, you know, the libertarians are out there, the Green Party, and they all have very valid ideas. But the two Republicans and Democrats, they have a tendency not to listen to them. And you know, it's a big arena, and there's a lot of room in this arena. The goal is to get ideas. I mean, you may have some good my son's a libertarian, and he gets some good ideas that will come out that we could integrate into a system and make it valid. But well, you know, it takes the ability to have discussions and talk to each other.
I've certainly enjoyed our discussion tonight. I'm so proud of you. Hometown mayor, done good, man. You're such an impressive person, and I've just always been so impressed with how reasonable you are on issues. I just wish everybody was like this.
Yeah, but wouldn't life be boring? You know, we all need a little bit of excitement, and yeah, I like the ability. I like my ability to be calm and rational most of the time, but I also like my ability to fly off the handle when you need to. And I really surprise a lot of people sometimes when I blow a fuse.
You bet. Listen, happy holidays to you, Jody, and the family. I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. And when this all dries up, let's get together for a beverage, okay?
We should. Yeah, give our best to Renee. You guys have a good holiday, and enjoy our meetings. I still remember our first meeting where we happened to bump into each other and right across from the fifth. Yeah, it's
many years ago.
You've been a friend ever since, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. We'll see you soon.
Take it easy, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.